She writes anonymous letters of encouragement to the quiet neighbor across the hall, sliding them under his door as Ghost. He's been secretly in love with her for months. When a copycat letter appears with the dangerous request, both of them have to follow the clues in paper, ink, and habit to protect each other, and finally say out loud what the notes have been saying all along. Reading a book. Nina waits for the elevator to whir past, for the footsteps to be elsewhere, and for courage to remember its job. She kneels at the doormat of 4B and pushes the envelope just far enough that the door's shadow hides it. The envelope is simple, cream with the slightest tooth. On the back, a tiny drawn moon. Inside, a few lines. To the neighbor who keeps watering the plant we share. It looks better, so does the morning. If you need proof you're doing something right, look at the plant and then at yourself. Ghost. P.S. The kettle squeals at 7:08. If it helps, I hear it too. It sounds like relief. She signs Ghost because anything else would be more frightening than the darkness of a hallway. She stands, hears her own heartbeat, and walks the 4 steps back to 4A. Behind her, in 4B, a shadow under the door brightens as the light leaks from the peephole. He is home. Reading a book. Evan has one of those faces that people call resting kindness. He sits on the floor with his back to the door like a child doing mail. He opens the letter with a butter knife because somebody once taught him that paper deserves courtesy. He reads, once and then again. The way you read a recipe you're already cooking. He has 3 others like it, one with the drawing of 3 mugs and the line, "Bad days still need tea." One with a sentence that startled him into laughing. "You're allowed to throw out the candle that smells like regret." One that simply said, "You outlived your worst day." He keeps them in a shoebox he refuses to feel cheesy about. He puts the new one on top. Across the hall lives Nina, the woman who presses her lips together when the elevator complains and who brings her own shopping bag to gilt the plastic ones. He watches her the way you watch a window, without being rude to its privacy. He is in love with her, a steady thing that sits next to his grocery list and his rent, ordinary and impossible. He has a suspicion about the letters, her vowels in the neighbor chat, the way her note on the "please not after midnight laundry room" sign used the same small dash before a joke. The tiny drawn moon. She wears a moon earring on Thursdays. But suspicion is not a promise, and he likes that Ghost has chosen mystery on purpose. He decides not to hunt the truth. He decides to water the plant and put the kettle on at 7:08. Reading a book. Mrs. Flores from 3C presses the elevator button with the authority of a woman who has pressed many buttons. "You look like good news," she tells Evan in the hallway. "Thank you," he says. "I got a letter." "From the government?" she asks, equal parts dread and gossip. "From someone kind," he says, and then blushes because secrecy and goodness are difficult to put in the same sentence. "Save it," she advises. "Paper remembers who we were." When the doors close, Nina steps out of 4A with a grocery tote and a face that still glows from doing a brave thing when no one was looking. "Morning," she says to Evan, and somehow the word fits the entire hallway. "Morning," he says, and his voice, traitor and ally, lets her hear a little more than civil neighbors owe each other. They walk toward the stairs at the same time and perform the ritual of friends who haven't admitted they are. After you, no you. Tie game, we both go, we pretend chivalry is democracy. Nina tells herself, don't say anything weird about leaves, and then says, "The plant looks better." "It does," Evan says. "Maybe someone wrote to it." She smiles at the floor, which is safer. "If someone did, I hope the plant keeps the letters. They do not look at each other while the thought completes itself. At her kitchen table, Nina's hand is steadier than her heart. She writes because last winter she allowed herself to disappear into a coat and no one noticed. She writes because her therapist said it helps to make kindness physical. She writes because the man across the hall plays guitar once a week, exactly badly enough to prove he enjoys it, and that sounds like a person worth encouraging. She doesn't write him a love letter, not exactly. Love letters are loud. She writes him the postcard-sized versions of courage. Even on the bad stairs, you still get to your floor. Your laugh heals the hallway. It's okay to be the person who waits. That's a kind of leadership. She signs Ghost because being herself would mean recalibrating everything. The casual high, the clean way they hand each other packages, the necessary fiction of apartments where no one is ever inconvenient. She imagines that if he guessed, maybe he would smile first. She imagines that if he didn't, she could still be his neighbor who was always finding coins in the laundry machine and pretending it's a miracle. Reading a book. Evan buys the good bread on Fridays and holds doors as if the hinges were auditioning. He moved in after a life that made him very tired of arguing. He has a paying job restoring photographs and a real job remembering faces who have no one else to remember them. He used to live across town in a house with a woman who saved jars and gave away promises. He learned from that love withholds nothing and keeps no score, but it should keep receipts because people forget their own goodness. He was in love with Nina from the day her bike chain dared him to be capable. She stood in the alley, cursing with care, chain greased into midnight. "May I?" he asked, and she nodded as if handing him a violin. He fixed it badly the first time, perfectly the second, and honestly the third. She thanked him with a lemon bar and the sense he had been trusted with something uncommon, an apology for trouble. Since then, he has collected small evidence. The day she taped a note to the broken buzzer that said, "Yell your name, I'll yell mine back." The way she laughs without distance. The fact that her mail is never drama, always envelopes with names that sound like either work or friendship. When the letters began, small, neutral paper with kindness folded into thirds, he let himself believe two things at once. This is her, and this is a kindness that exists regardless of her. He liked both possibilities. He did not need to know to be grateful. Reading a book. On a Thursday that tastes like errands, an envelope is taped to Evan's door. It is the same cream, but slicker. The moon is on the wrong side, drawn like a C, not a curl. He opens it and immediately frowns. The letters lean in the wrong direction. The voice is wrong, like someone trying on politeness and getting the hem caught. To the neighbor who needs an adventure. If you want to know who I am, meet me in the storage room by the basement at 9 tonight. Don't tell anyone. Surprise is part of the gift. Bye. Ghost. He reads it again and again, and each time it sounds less like someone offering a kindness and more like someone offering a story they intend to star in. He looks across the hall at 4A and imagines Nina's face making the shape of no. He puts the letter next to the real ones and doesn't have to compare long. The real ones smell of tea and paper dust. This one smells like new ink and someone else's plan. He takes photos. He walks down to the office where Tariq, the super, keeps the 1,000 keys and 1,000 small mercies. Tariq looks at the letter and whistles through his teeth. "Basement after hours is how horror movies are born," he says. "Who would do this?" "Someone new in the building," Evan says. "Or someone old who doesn't want to be old," Tariq says. "I'll be there at 9, and so will you, and so will my wrench, and so will common sense. Don't go alone." Evan nods,
Grateful for a man who files kindness under maintenance.
Reading a book. He wants to tell Nina. He also wants to keep the ghost and the Nina in their current orbits until he knows the gravity of this thing. At noon, he walks to the post office to buy stamps from Alma, who believes in them. If I show you two envelopes, he asks, can you tell me if they belong to the same soul? Souls have very different penmanship, she says, amused but game. She looks closely. Different pen widths, yes. This ink is sharper, almost gel. The others are rollerball or fountain pen. The fold is off. Your real person letter folds with the bottom edge forward, which means they learned at a different school or on a different day. Also, this tape is hardware store tape. Your real person uses washi with moons. And look, this corner is dog-eared as if someone wrote on a wall or a knee. The other letters are flatter. A person who writes at a table writes differently than a person who writes standing up. You just solved a crime, he says. I solved a habit, Alma says. Habits are where crimes commute. He buys a book of stamps with birds who look like they know something, and on impulse, a pack of blank cream envelopes. He goes home and crafts a plan that fits inside a sentence. Don't let anyone walk into the dark thinking they're invited.
Reading a book. Tariq keeps the light off at first. If they think they can ghost, let them, he whispers. We'll be the part of the movie where the audience yells, don't, as if that helps. They wait. Evan's heart does push-ups it didn't schedule. At 9:06, footsteps. Not Nina's. He knows that already. These footsteps are too confident. Learned at a different school. Then a shadow in the corridor. Then a face that Evan has seen in daytime pretending to be helpful. Owen, the super's nephew, all risks and opinions. Hey, Owen says when the light clicks on and the wrench exists. This is weird. What are you doing here? Tariq asks, tired in a way that says, I am not surprised and I am disappointed. I have the energy for one of those. Got a note, Owen says, pulling out a phone. He has a photo of the same letter taped to his own door. Thought it was some scavenger thing. Didn't want to miss out. Who else? Tariq asks. Owen shrugs. I put the note on 3 doors for fun. The guy in 4B looked like he could use something to do. You put the note, Evan starts and stops before any word that would break the hallway. Owen lifts his hands. It's a joke. People get so serious. I saw someone sliding letters the other night. I thought, like, group game. You saw someone, Tariq says evenly, doing a kindness, and you tried to make it into a thrill. Yeah, but nobody got hurt, Owen says, instantly wrong. Tariq glances at Evan. We're done, he says to the nephew. You're done with keys for a while. And you apologize to the building for making shadows where there should be light. Owen, who has not yet learned the map of consequences, mutters something in the universal language of youth and leaves. Evan stands very still. He thinks of the letters lined up like small boats. He thinks of Nina finding a door with a note that pretends to be her. We should tell her, Tariq says. I will, Evan says, and feels something in his chest decide to prefer bravery.
Reading a book. Nina is in socks on her couch with the book on the arm and a pencil in her hair. She hears the text from the building group ping and ignores it because it is mostly about compost and small wars over recycling etiquette. She does not know that on other doors the wrong letter sits. Her evening is quiet and honest. She writes a card to herself that says, "You chose not to hide from your own kindness." She puts it on her fridge. At 9:22, there's a knock. She checks the peephole and sees Evan, haloed by a hallway light that refuses to choose a brightness. "Hi," he says when she opens. His hair looks like it voted for honesty. Are you busy? Do you have a minute?" She steps back and makes room. He tells her about the letter. He does not say, "I hoped it was you," because he prefers the truth to come dressed appropriately. He tells her about the storage room, and Tariq and Owen and the wrench that never needed to swing. She listens and watches his mouth form sentences that do not compete with each other. She is impressed by the way his hands do not perform. They just exist next to the story like bookends. "I'm sorry someone tried to turn this into an adventure. The letters have been..." He stops and changes registers. "They helped." He looks at her then, the first direct look of the night, a look that knows he may be wrong, and also knows wrong is an honest possibility. Nina sets down her mug. If a person could become a sentence, she would be the one that begins, "What if we just..." She could pretend. Or she could do the brave thing. She goes to the kitchen drawer where she keeps tape and bag clips and an envelope or two. She comes back with a small roll of washi printed with moons. She holds it in her palm like a diplomatic credential. "This is mine," she says. "It might have nothing to do with anything." His face opens very carefully, like a window that was painted shut and now has a second chance. "Hi," he says, softly, half laughing at his own relief. "I suspected." "I thought you might," she says. "Your eyes do that thing where they become parentheses." "I didn't want to chase you," he says. "I've chased enough in my life." It wasn't a test. It was a way to be braver when no one was watching. They stand with the honesty between them like a new hallway.
Reading a book. They sit at her table. The plat on the seal decides to be relevant. Nina brings out the shoebox from her closet. Yes, she kept copies. Yes, she is that person. No, she is not sorry. Evan brings out his shoebox. Yes, he keeps everything. Yes, he is that person. No, he is not sorry either. They put the letters in 2 columns and the room fills with a soft hum that might be paper recognizing paper. They read their own kindness back to themselves and it lands in the right bodies. Nina, you really keep the kettle time? Evan, it has become the only constant in a world of variable. She laughs. A constant that squeals. He laughs. Relief usually does. They talk about why she started. January is a door, not a month. The building was quiet, not gentle. She needed to make a sound. They talk about why he never asked. He liked not knowing almost as much as he likes knowing now. Then they talk about Owen and the way adolescent mischief becomes adult harm if not interrupted by a wrench and a man named Tariq. I'll talk to him, from a distance where empathy can make better sense than anger. He tells her, Alma at the post office solved the ink, and she delights in the idea of paper forensics saving a night. They agree to tell Tariq thank you in the language he understands, cookies he can pretend or rent. And the letters? He asks. If you want them to stop, I can stop. If you want them to have a return address, they can. He thinks, then shakes his head. Don't stop because we started. Maybe just sign your name sometimes. Or draw 2 moons. 2 moons, she says, pleased, ambitious. Accurate, he says, and only realizes later that he meant us.
The next day, Alma beams when they come in together, which is dangerously like a blessing. Tariq accepts cookies with a gruffness that fools no one. He has already had a conversation with Owen that includes the phrase, "There is no such thing as harmless when it wastes someone else's safety." Officer Nwosu from the precinct, steady voice, perfect pen, takes a report. She is warm and allergic to drama. "We're not pressing charges unless this escalates," Tariq says. "We're pressing expectations." Nwosu agrees. "Also pressing sense," she adds. "Basements are where good intentions go to trip." Evan asks if there's a way to prevent the copycat move. "We can't child-proof the whole world," the officer says, "but we can child-proof hallways."
motion sensors, better lighting, a sign that says, "We see you," without being rude. Nina designs a sign that reads, "Even ghosts have neighbors." She tapes it near the stairwell and smiles at the building, choosing to be clever.
In the weeks that follow, the building becomes slightly more itself. The compost war solves itself with a second bin and a note that says, "Banana peels are not opinions." Mrs. Flores learns to use the package app and becomes dangerous with evidence. Tariq oils the elevator and calls it "my orchestra." The plant on the sale throws a new leaf into the argument. Nina still writes, less anonymously, more intimately. Sometimes she signs Ghost, sometimes N, sometimes no signature and a pressed clover. She varies the moons, one for friend, two for I'm saying more than I'm saying. She notices the way Evan reads them. Not greedy, just grateful. The way a person reads instructions that came with the thing he already bought. Evan writes back, not letters exactly, but notes on her door in pencil that say, "Your laugh today was the best part of the hallway soundtrack," and "The plant has decided we're professionals." He also writes a song that he refuses to play for her and then plays for her in the kitchen while the kettle narrates. Sometimes they walk at the hour when the city decides it is allowed to be pretty. They tell each other the dossiers they've built in their heads and discover how often they were almost right. They buy 2 lemon bars and decide that the new way to keep fear from becoming tradition is to explain it out loud before it upgrades. They also fail at honesty sometimes. Old habits do not retire, they request new tasks. She hesitates to text first. He assumes a silence is his fault. They say so. The detective thread shifts from who wrote the letters to what do we do with everything they said?
The building has one more puzzle to offer, a small one dressed as a big one. Someone starts scratching at doors. Not vandalism exactly, more like a bored key. A neighbor posts blurry photos in the chat. Panic performs. Is it a break-in? Is it kids? Is it the ghost? This last is not helpful. Nina feels the old impulse to apologize for everyone and then decides to do something better, to notice well. She checks the scratches. Low, diagonal, same angle. She rubs a paper over with a pencil and the texture reveals a pattern. Left-handed, small radius, reused movement. She asks Tariq if any deliveries have changed. He says a new courier took the route this week. Left-handed, he holds his scanner like a violin. They watch the courtyard. The courier appears, efficient, polite, dragging the edge of his bag against the doors when he turns. Nina, who has been practicing kindness that does not apologize for itself, steps out. "Can I show you something?" she asks. He follows her eyes to the scratches and winces. He moves the bag to the other shoulder. The problem ends the same hour it began. Mrs. Flores tells the building, "It was a bag, not a burglar," in a tone that tells the universe to behave. Panic abdicates. Nina learns that her kind of detective work is simply noticing that fear loves costume and hates precision. Evan watches her do all this and experiences a very modern phenomenon of falling in love because someone confronted a courier with empathy and spatial reasoning.
Reading a book. It happens on a late afternoon that stole the lighting from a good memory. They are in the stairwell, their building's favorite confession booth. Evan has his shoulder against the rail. Nina has her hand on the step like a pianist who forgot the notes and remembered the song. He says, "I was in love with you before the letters. The letters just gave my heart a mailbox." He says it with the same attention he uses to restore faces. She breathes out and in as if practicing both options. "I was afraid of saying anything because I didn't want to lose the shape of the hallway," she says. "But I think the hallway wants us to be brave." "You know that's not how hallways work," he says, and they both laugh because of course it is exactly how halls work. He is not a kneeler or grand jester.
He is a man who respects hinges. He stands there and lets his face belong to the moment. She steps into him like a sentence stepping into its verb. The kiss is not cinematic. It is a very good sentence with an honest period. SFX. Distant elevator bell. Two people remembering to breathe. They pull back, and the world remains. The plant does not clap. The building does not applaud. But the silence approves.
They do not stop writing. They negotiate the strange treaty between living across a hall and living in each other's biographies. Some letters are slid under doors because the hallway is still sacred. Some are handed over with tea. Some are texts at 1 a.m. that read, "If sleep is a person, tell him to come back." Sometimes she signs Ghost for fun. Sometimes he draws 2 moons for accuracy. Sometimes they mail each other postcards from the same city just to give Alma pleasure. They also keep their boxes, not because they live in the past, but because every now and then you need proof that a good thing was deliberate. On a rainy morning, Evan opens the shoebox and reads the first one with the 3 mugs. He realizes he had misunderstood the line on purpose. Bad days still need tea was not a compromise, it was a strategy. Nina opens hers on a day when she was noisy in her own head and finds the one she wrote after her worst week. You outlived your worst day. She laughs at the pronoun and keeps it anyway.
They throw a micro party the building can believe in. 6 neighbors, 2 pies, 1 dog that thinks chairs are stairs. Tariq plays the role of I told you so and wears an apron that says diagnostic tools and dough. Mrs. Flores brings a framed photo of the plant for its records. Alma arrives late with stamps that say, "Love is in the mail," and the smug knowledge that she saw this coming by the way they folded their envelopes. Owen stands awkwardly near the window. He has apologized 3 different ways and intends to invent a 4th. He's learning. Nina hands him a slice and says, "We're good," in a way that means you're safe if you stay kind. They raise paper cups. To hallways, Nina says. To hinges, Evan adds. To letters that arrive exactly when they should, Alma says, which is always a controversial opinion and therefore poetic. The building hums in approval, the way buildings do, by not collapsing. A year from now, if you must check, someone will ask them how they met, and they'll say the true version. We met in the hallway, and the letters told us to say hello. Someone will ask who wrote first, and they'll both lift their hands because that's what it felt like. There will be new small mysteries, a humming noise behind 2D that turns out to be a fish tank with political ambitions, a lost cat that is not lost, just auditing strangers, a fire alarm that thinks toast is arson. They will solve them with the same method, paper and attention, kindness that doesn't apologize for existing. They will fight sometimes, as people do. They will take walks separately and come back together. They will put notes under doors that say, "I'm sorry that I talked like a person whose mouth was faster than his heart." They will tape a moon next to an apology because it helps. They will learn that living in love is not a plot twist. It is maintenance. At 7:08 on most mornings, the kettle will still squeal like relief. They will grin at it. He will water the plant. She will write, "You're doing something right," on a Post-it and stick it somewhere he won't expect it. Inside the bread box, under the shoehorn, on the ceiling if she can reach it. And sometimes, for no good reason except that paper is patient and people are complicated, she will sign a letter, "Ghost," and slide it under the door. He will open it with the butter knife, sit on the floor like a sensible child, and read it twice, the way you read a recipe you are already cooking.